Let us now go to general adult tests. The topic is what your blood pressure reading means. High blood pressure, also known as hypertension, is a long-term medical condition that can lead to cardiovascular disease. However, the silent killer is both preventable and treatable. Along with other lifestyle choices, what we eat and drink can have a direct effect on our blood pressure. Your blood pressure may go up when you exercise or rush around. It then settles when you are at rest, and this is when you should measure it. The ideal systolic blood pressure range is 90 to 120. This is the best range for your blood pressure in order to keep healthy. You'll have a reduced risk of heart disease and stroke if your blood pressure is in this range. An elevated blood pressure is 120 to 130. This is a normal reading. However, to remain as healthy as possible, you should make lifestyle changes to help reduce your blood pressure and prevent it from getting higher. Stage 1 hypertension is 130 to 140. Your doctor will probably prescribe medication to reduce your blood pressure if it's in this range. This will reduce the risk of heart disease and stroke. And a systolic blood pressure reading of 140 to 150 is stage 2 hypertension, where again your doctor will have to prescribe medication to reduce your blood pressure if it is in this range. Low blood pressure is when your systolic blood pressure is 90 or lower. This doesn't always cause symptoms, but may cause someone to feel dizzy, faint, and sweaty. It can be either a side effect of medication, blood loss, dehydration, sepsis, or heart and lung problems. Seek medical attention if you have low blood pressure and you have symptoms such as dizziness. A normal blood pressure changes from a high as the heart pumps to a low when it relaxes. The muscles in our artery walls respond to these fluctuations by tensing and relaxing in rhythm. If your blood pressure is high, your arteries have to work harder to resist the pressure, so their walls become stronger and thicker. And as your arteries get narrower, blood pressure rises further. Did you know that worldwide the number of people with uncontrolled hypertension is estimated to exceed 1 billion? Here are some self-help measures to control hypertension: eating a high-fiber diet, low in fat, salt, and sugar, reducing alcohol intake, and engaging in regular aerobic exercise. Thank you so much for your attention.
May I magsasalita? Interviewing. Let's discuss lifestyle and diet. Lifestyle and diet. Inquiry involves asking not only about physical and emotional signs and symptoms, but also the person's medical history. It is also relevant to ask about a person's lifestyle and diet, which includes what they typically eat, how much and how often they eat, how much they exercise, how much stress they have, how much relaxation they get, their consumption of stimulants such as coffee, tobacco, and alcohol. This information will inform us about possible etiological causes. At the same time, it will give us an idea of what to recommend to the client with regard to supporting the treatment. The diet is incredibly important etiological factor in many imbalances. It is therefore important to ask about what people eat in general. I usually get the client to tell me what they eat during a typical day, and afterwards I ask more specifically about certain dietary factors such as dairy products, sugar, raw vegetables, hot spices, alcohol, and so on, that could have a relevance to their diagnosis. Eating too much at a time, too often, or too late in the day, as well as not chewing the food enough, can lead to food stagnation and weaken the stomach and spleen qi. Exercise is extremely important, and a person who does not get enough physical movement will tend to develop stagnation conditions. If they have a certain working position, such as sitting still all day, it will put a strain on specific organs, in this case, the spleen. Too much exercise, on the other hand, can weaken a person's qi and blood. Certain forms of exercise will have a negative effect on the specific imbalances. Lifting heavy weights will weaken kidney yang. Swimming or playing sports in cold, damp environments will have a negative effect on cold and dampness conditions. Exercise in which a person sweats profusely is not good for people who are qi deficient, yin deficient, or blood deficient, because qi and fluids are lost through the sweating. Extreme sports where the person gets an adrenaline rush consumes their jing. The mental rush they experience is jing that is being transformed into shen. Many people are conscious of the need to get sufficient exercise, but unfortunately, fewer people are aware of the importance of getting enough rest, both physical and mental rest. We typically live very yang lifestyles and have little yin time in our daily lives. We need to balance all our yang activity with yin rest and contemplation. Unfortunately, many people think that they get relaxation and stress relief by watching television or sitting in front of a computer. Here, they only get physical rest but is still mentally stimulated. It is good to recommend that people begin to cultivate meditation, qigong, tai chi, or yoga. If you suspect that they will have difficulty accepting things that sound so foreign and mysterious, you can propose instead that they take time daily to really unwind by lying down or sitting completely still, emptying their head of thoughts and concentrating on their breathing. It is especially important in the evenings and at night to cultivate calm and tranquility. One night be tempted to claim that the invention of electric lighting has in fact had a fundamentally negative impact on people's yin. In the past, people only had limited opportunities to be active after nightfall, often just staring into the flames of fire. Now they can stay physically and especially mentally active throughout the yin period of the night. Stimulants such as tobacco create phlegm and heat in the lung and injure the yin. Alcohol creates heat in the liver and stomach, as well as producing dampness and phlegm. Coffee activates kidney jing, which is transformed into yang qi. Coffee therefore weakens the kidney yin and kidney yang. It overstimulates the heart yang and thereby weakens the heart yin. Illicit substances such as marijuana, cocaine, amphetamines, and so generally have a draining effect on the kidney jings, spreading and thereby weakening heart qi. Thank you for your attention. Okay. Let's now go to Foot Yang Ming Stomach Meridian. Let's discuss Stomach 7, the lower passage. It is located on the lateral of face in the depression between midpoint below of the lateral zygomatic arch and mandibular notch. Stomach 7, lower passage, lower gate below the joint, lower hinge. Crossing point of stomach bladder and gallbladder. Removes obstruction from the channel and is used in facial problems such as paralysis, trigeminal neuralgia, upper jaw problems and toothache, gingivitis, and loss of voice. Benefits the ear. This point opens and influences the ear and can be used for deafness, earache, and tinnitus. Indications problem of the face and ear. Location. It is located with the mouth closed at the lower border of the zygomatic arch in the center of the depression of the mandibular fossa between the coronoid process of the condyloid process of the mandible. How to find. Palpate along lower border of the zygomatic arch towards the ear. Stomach 7 is located in a clearly palpable depression just below the temporomandibular joint and at the posterior border of the masseter muscle. To confirm, when the patient's mouth is fully opened, the condyloid process of the lower jaw slides anteriorly and the depression disappears. Gallbladder 3 is located directly superior to stomach 7 on the upper border of the zygomatic arch. Needling. Insert the needle with the patient's mouth closed. 0.3 to 0.5 con vertically or 1 to 1.5 con transversely in the direction of stomach 6, small intestine 19, and small intestine 18. Actions indications. Opens the channel, benefits the jaw and teeth, elevates pain, benefits the ears. Special features, meeting point with the gallbladder channel, important local point and frequently used trigger point. Crossing point of stomach and gallbladder, a local point for facial paralysis, trigeminal neuralgia, jaw, or ear problems such as otitis, deafness, earache, or tinnitus. Thank you for your attention.
Okay, let's discuss the bladder patterns, damp heat in the bladder. Concept, this pattern is ascribed to the invasion of damp heat in the bladder. Damp heat impairs the function of the bladder. According to the Sanjo pattern differentiation, it belongs to the lower jaw. Clinical manifestations, there is frequent and urgent urination, distending pain in the lower abdomen, burning pain on urination, scanty dark yellow urine, or turbid cloudy urine. Hematuria, blood in the urine, stones in the urine, fever, distension, and pain of the lumbar region, red tongue, yellow, and sticky tongue coating, a slippery and rapid pulse. Key symptoms, frequent and urgent urination, burning pain on urination, stones or blood in the urine. For the bladder damp heat, under the failure to transform qi, abnormal bladder qi transformation, there's frequent and urgent urination, burning and urination, dark yellow urine. Damp heat evaporates body fluids after a long time. So there is stones in the urine. For damp heat in the bladder, damp heat induces fluid, there is scanty urine. Damp heat damages the blood network, blood in the urine. Heat steams dampness, there's fever. Damp heat damages the kidney, there's back pain. Red tongue, yellow and sticky tongue coating, a slippery and rapid pulse. For the summary, damp heat in the bladder, etiology, excessive exposure to exterior damp heat or dampness or cold, emotional strain. Underlying or accompanying pathology, there is dampness and heat in the bladder. Possible presenting conditions, urinary tract infections or urinary calculus. Signs and symptoms, frequent and urgent urination, burning urination, difficult urination, dark yellow turbid urine, blood in the urine, fever, thirst with desire to drink, hypogastric fullness and pain, feeling hot, sand or stones in urine. Pulse, slippery, rapid, and wiry on the left rear position. The tongue is thick, sticky yellow, coating on the root with red spots. Treatment principle is to clear heat and disinhibit damp in the bladder. Free waterways, disinhibit water and free lymph. Acupuncture treatment, we use spleen 9 for damp heat in the lower burner. Bladder 22 opens lower water passages. Stomach 28 regulates the bladder in urination. Bladder 28, dampness in the bladder. Spleen 6 for damp heat in the lower burner. Ren 3, front move point of the bladder. Ren 9 resolves general dampness. Needle with drainage. For small amounts of red urine, we add DO 27. For pain on urination, we use liver 5, liver 2. For blood in urine, spleen 10, bladder 60. Relevant advice when the urinary bladder damp heat. When there is urinary bladder damp heat, the person should avoid foods and beverages that generate damp or heat. They should avoid exposure to climatic influences that can result in damp, heat, or cold invading the body. They should also avoid stress in situations that can result in emotional frustrations. Thank you for your attention. Let's discuss inquiring contents. First, the general approach and points of attention. It is essential that the physician is courteous and sympathetic to the patient's suffering. This is the only way to win the patient's trust, cooperation, and willingness to confide. Carrying out the inquiry with the utmost concentration and professional demeanor. Do not sigh or show any surprise or pessimistic attitude about the patient's condition. It is especially important to maintain a cool head if the patient is in critical condition or has a mental illness. Such a professional demeanor helps to reassure the patient. Second, the physician should focus initial attention on patient's chief complaint and make a deliberate inquiry about it. The inquiry should be comprehensive with emphasis on significant facts. As the story unfolds, encourage the patient where necessary to fill in the gaps. However, it is important to avoid pointed prompting or inducing the patient to say what you may wish to hear, as that may lead down to a wrong path and create an inconsistency between the history and the findings by the other methods of diagnosis. Number 3, a patient in critical condition should be given immediate treatment after only a brief inquiry and examination. This helps to avoid any unnecessary delay in urgent treatment. A comprehensive and careful history and examination may be conducted when the patient's condition takes a favorable turn or it's stabilized. Number 4, in inquiring process, simple language instead of medical terminology should be used. Be sure to catch the exact meaning of the patient dialect and slang and ask for clarification where there is any vagueness or ambiguity. Number 5, if necessary, obtain the history or supplement it from the patient's companion or parents. Next is contents of inquiring. Number 1, general data. This includes the patient's name, sex, age, matrimonial status, ethnicity, occupation, hometown, and address. All these are helpful for the physician to take responsibility of the patient, to write the case history, and to make the correct diagnosis. Number 2, chief complaint. The chief complaint refers to those symptoms that cause the patient most distress. The symptoms and their course should be recorded separately from other symptoms. The chief complaint is the main reason for the patient to seek medical advice and serve as a guide to the correct diagnosis. Record the chief complaint in accurate and concise language without medical jargon. Thank you for your attention.
Now go to interview and history taking strategies. The topic is functions of interview and health history. In taking histories, follow each line of thought. Ask no leading questions. Never suggest. Give the patient's own words in the complaint. By Sir William Osler. Interviewing and taking health histories serve 5 major functions. First, it establishes the initial bond between provider and the patient. Number 2, it lays down the foundation for subsequent clinical decision-making. Number 3, it provides a legal record of the subjective and objective data elicited during the clinical interview, which drive clinical judgments. Subjective data are the information that the patient or other informant provides during the health history. They are so called because they reflect the patient's perception and recall of his current health needs and past health. Perception and recall are subject to many influences that make the information less quantifiable and open to multiple interpretations. In contrast, objective data are measurable and verifiable, such as test results and physical examination findings. Both types of data are subject to error, and both are critical to the caregiving process. Our perceptions filter all our experiences and significantly influence our behavior. Successful patient outcomes are dependent upon successfully integrating both subjective and objective data to formulate individualized plans of care to which the patient will adhere. The health history contains predominantly subjective data. Data such as test results or copies of past medical examinations supplement the information that the patient provides during the interview. The combination of subjective and objective data constitutes the patient's database. Number 4, it fulfills a critical component of the documentation required for third-party payer reimbursement for clinical services. And number 5, it serves as an essential element in the peer review process for evaluation of clinical practice, such as application of evidence-based practice and identification of desired patient outcomes. Why do we interview? Building a sound provider-patient relationship is essential to effective clinical management of patients, especially with complex health and illness needs. Mutual trust is a critical element in this relationship. Also important is the ethical principle of autonomy, which places ultimate healthcare decision-making in the hands of the patient. The ability to exercise self-determination is greatly facilitated by clinicians who actively seek to engage their patients as true partners in the caregiving process. The old adage, knowledge is power, is a key to patient empowerment. Patients must feel involved in their healthcare. How the clinician conducts the initial health history and subsequent data collection and interviews exerts a profound influence on the nature of the provider-patient relationship. The clinician and patient form a dyad. In order to guide the patient's decision-making processes and to facilitate adherence to therapeutic interventions, the clinician and the patient must form an ongoing partnership built on mutual trust and respect for the patient's active role in making healthcare decisions. Thank you so much for your attention.
Let's now go to 5-element constitutional. Let's discuss 4-needle technique. The 4-needle technique is used in 5-element constitutional acupuncture for transferring qi from one organ to another, although it is rarely used. It was first developed by the Korean monk Sa'am in the 17th century. It is commonly used by Korean and Japanese practitioners for treating the root cause of a person's illness. For example, it is used by the eminent practitioners Kwang Duan in Korea and Nanagiya in Japan. 4-needle technique is based on 5-element theory that qi can be transferred from one element to another, the Sheng and Qi cycles. This is in keeping with the principle expressed in Su Wen, Chapter 5. If there is a qi deficiency in particular location or channel, the qi can be conducted or guided from another channels to supplement the weakness. The 4-needle technique uses command points to transfer qi, supports this by treating the element that controls the element that is being primarily treated. In 5-element constitutional acupuncture, it is commonly used if the practitioner is unable to harmonize the qi of the two elements along the Sheng cycle. This is particularly the case when treating a husband-wife imbalance. It is used to tonify an organ or to sedate it, although tonification is far more common. Tonification. The principle of tonification is to tonify the horary point to the mother organ, to give it a boost, and to tonify the tonification point on the deficient organ to transfer the qi from the mother. At the same time, the element point of the controlling element is sedated on the deficient organ, as well as the horary element point on the organ that controls the deficient organ. This lessens the control of the organ and makes the transfer more effective. In the case of the kidneys, therefore, the following points are tonified. Lung 8, the horary element point. Kidney 7, the tonification point. At the same time, the following points are sedated. Kidney 3, the earth point, the earth controls water. Spleen 3, the horary element point. In practice, unless practitioners use the 4-needle technique, often they look up to the combination of points from the following table, as you can see in the diagram. Sedation. The 4-needle technique can be used to sedate an organ, although this is used less than the tonification technique. The principle here is to sedate the sedation point of the affected organ along with the horary element point on the child organ. The point resonant with the element that controls the organ is simultaneously tonified along with the horary point on the controlling organ. The points are given in the table below. Thank you for your attention. Let's go to erectile dysfunction. Let's discuss how penetrating vessel influences erections. Erection. The penetrating vessel influences erection in 7 ways. Being the sea of blood, it is responsible for the filling of blood of the corpus cavernosum that determines erection. The penetrating vessel is connected to the postnatal chi through its point stomach 30, which is located near the root of the penis, and it therefore provides the necessary chi for erection to occur. The penetrating vessel is connected to the prenatal chi at REN 1, kidney 13, and REN 4, and it therefore provides the essence for erection to occur. The penetrating vessel controls the membranes, and as we have seen, most of the tissues in the penis are part of the membranes. The penetrating vessel controls the ancestral muscle, which is the penis. The penetrating vessel controls the connecting channels in the penis, which allow the penis to be filled with blood when erect. The penetrating vessel plays an important role in allowing the communication between the heart and kidneys, and therefore the descending of heart blood to the penis. In a nutshell, erection depends on chi and blood. It depends on chi because it needs chi for the penis to come up, in the same way that in women, lactation depends on chi for the pumping action. It depends on blood because the corpus cavernosum needs to fill the blood for erection to occur, in the same way that in women, lactation depends on blood, as this is the origin of milk. Therefore, the penetrating vessel can be used to treat erectile dysfunction. When there is a disharmony between the heart and the kidneys, with heart chi and heart blood not descending to the penis, use the opening and coupled points of the penetrating vessel, spleen 4 on the left and P6 on the right, together with kidney 12, REN 4, REN 6, kidney 16, bladder 17, bladder 15, and bladder 23. Use the bladder 15 back transporting point of the heart to tonify and invigorate blood, as the heart governs blood, and to promote the descending of the heart blood down to the penis. The descending of heart chi and heart blood to communicate with the kidneys plays a role in the sexual function. To use the points kidney 16 and bladder 17 because they communicate with each other, the former being related to the kidneys and the latter to the heart. They therefore strengthen the communication between the heart and the kidneys. They do so also by virtue of the penetrating vessel. Kidney 16 is on this vessel as it stems from kidneys and it reaches the heart. In clinical note, the penetrating vessel can be used to treat erectile dysfunction. then there is a disharmony between the heart and the kidneys. Use the opening and coupled points plen 4 on the left and P6 on the right, together with kidney 12, Ren 4, kidney 16, bladder 17, Ren 4, Ren 6, bladder 15, and bladder 23. Thank you for your attention.